You mentioned Manoah, who has not been fine. He's now not sent to Buffalo, not sent to AA or single. Like, he's right down to the Florida Complex League.
To the lab.
To basically be rebuilt. I take a little bit of issue with the way you describe his outing on Monday, because the one is like a perfect kind of bunt up the line, right? Like a right to third that if Chapman gets to, maybe that guy ends up out. There's an error by Vladdy at first base. Like, he had... he should have been out of that first inning, and then the wheels came off. And this guy is clearly not in a place where he's able to recover from that right now.
Yeah.
And you wonder if he gets out of that first inning at 2-0 instead of whatever it might have been. Can he has sort of battled through some games here where he still manages to go 5, keep you close. It's not pretty, but he hangs around. And then he gets Minnesota on Saturday, who isn't supposed to be a strong lineup. Like, he's not been good, and I think eventually this was probably going to come, but it is interesting to think that, a bounce or two the other way on Monday, and maybe he's still here this weekend making that start, and it's just the way it imploded around him after a couple things didn't go his way that they had to clearly, they don't want him to just go to Buffalo and work on, getting a little bit of confidence back. They clearly think you got to go all the way down, and we got to work through some technical things here, and depending on who you read, there's some talk that you may not see him again this season, right? Like, depending on how long this takes sometimes, maybe he goes down there and it takes 2 months and he's sort of back before the trade deadline. But this team looks a lot different without
your day one starter.
The guy you thought was going to be your ace this year. Yeah. And
in full disclosure, I was still eating dinner. I asked the assistant, I'm like, hey, what's the score in the Blue Jays game?
Right.
7-0, top of the first. I'm like, okay, so
I guess I'll watch the hockey game.
Yeah, I didn't see that first. So
there was some bad breaks there.
I was looking at the numbers
before the house,
but they needed to send that guy down, because there's no saying you let him out of the first inning at 2-0 that it's not imploding in the second. Like,
sure,
it's not like it's a.
But now we're into a whole game of what if. And
yep, for sure we are. But to me, that guy should have gone down at least a week before. Like, to me, the Jays, again, look at the Bass decision. They're late on some of these decisions.
Yeah.
He's not getting it done. Hasn't, largely outside of maybe one start. He hasn't had it.
No.
He hasn't had it. And then now you can clearly see him from week to week to week in his post games where he's pitched. Guy's got no confidence.
No, he's beaten down.
Completely rattled. And this is a guy who that was part of his calling card.
Yeah.
Aggressive.
Being an asshole out there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Bulldog. Either leading the league in hit batters in the last 2 years, because he doesn't mind throwing inside.
Yep.
And his natural action, sort of to right-handers, there's a lot of stuff that fades up and in. And so, but he's that big, intimidating guy, and you're like, I love that about him. But he doesn't have any of that.
No, right? and I was listening to our buddy Arden Zwelling on At the Letters and their podcast this week talk about, some of the numbers they've dove deep on, a lot of people talking about the pitch clock and is it affecting his fitness. Well, his biggest issues are with the first batter of each inning. Those are where he hasn't even had time to get tired yet. It's an easy thing, and maybe it's part of it, but that's clearly not the biggest issue. There's something wrong technically, and this is going to be interesting to watch, because even here in Toronto, and it happens in every organization, you've seen Halladay, you've seen Romero go back down, get rebuilt, and come up and be fine. Yeah, man, the Cologne and Eau de Chassin or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
But you've seen guys have to go all the way back down, get rebuilt, figure it out, and make their way back up. And that could happen. But there's also guys that go down and you just never hear from them again. Baseball is a funny business, sports in general, but once you've sort of lost it and then you've lost your confidence, maybe it doesn't come back. Maybe he is never that number one guy again. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that is every bit as on the table right now as the Roy Halladay redemption story, right?
Yeah, and it was interesting. I can't remember who I was reading sort of last week when somebody brought that up, and they were saying, yeah, the difference with Halladay is he hadn't had the breakthrough at the major league level.
He wasn't already an ace and a playoff game one starter and a home opener
He
starter.
was not that before he got sent down to sort of totally retool.
And so what a mind fuck that would be.
Yeah.
I'm back in the lowest possible facing 18 and 19-year-olds that have just been drafted out of Venezuela or
You're Larry Walkers who just played hockey and have never really played baseball before. But yeah, that it's closer to Ricky Romero. So those who want to say, yeah, but look at Doc. Doc went down and came back and
it's not the same.
Threw a complete perfect game and did Cy Youngs and yada yada. Yeah, it's closer to Ricky Romero, who had some physical issues when he went down too. But Ricky Romero was never Ricky Romero again.
Nope.
And so that is what you have to now. Manoah doesn't have the physical ailments. I think he may have some delivery issues.
Yep.
Right. So in terms of the physical side, but man, it's a nasty combo of that confidence and the mental side, which is really fucked. Like if you're up there and Schneider, I think, was saying, he's like, yeah, he's up there hoping for outs or hoping for strikes, right? And trying to place that ball. You're just going to get hammered, right? So I thought it was a good idea to send him down. Let him work on it in a different situation, because we've seen over the past 2 months that he's the positives you see him making in between starts is not translating into actual results in game.
Yeah, like everybody's saying, his side sessions have been great, his bullpens have been great, and then he gets out there and it's not
Where's
there.
that at?
It's not there. So we'll see. That's going to be an interesting story and an important story. And one of the things, I actually traded a few messages with our buddy Scott MacArthur this past week, and we were more so talking about Anthony Bass, but his point is well founded. Maybe one of the reasons they were hanging on to Bass and were so reluctant to send down Manoah is this management group's been here since 2016, Ross Adkins since 2017, and they haven't done shit to bring you pitching depth, right? Like they've developed, obviously, some good players. They've made some good trades. But where's even the middling starter in the rotation? Like the number 4 guy that is our guy that we drafted and developed. Like you traded for Barrios, you signed Kikuchi, you signed Bassett. Yeah, exactly. Again, Gosman is a free agent signing, so Manoah is the only guy, and he's now down in the minors. Same thing in the bullpen. There's not much there that you drafted and developed, and that's a stain on this management group, who you and I both at one point were quite cold on, kind of warmed up to with the way they rebuilt and started spending some money. But there's no depth in either the bullpen or the rotation, and that's entirely on this management group.